Johnny Cage, Kitana, Sonya, Kano, Shao Kahn, Liu Kang, Jax, Jade, Cole Young, Kung Lao, Quan Chi, Shang Tsung, Raiden, Bihan, Scorpion, Flawless Victory.
What's up, guys? Long time no see. Today I decided to give you guys a review of Mortal Kombat II, the second in the current Mortal Kombat film series and fourth live-action film. This game is also based on the popular video game series of the same name, and although this film did come out a couple of months ago, they never played it at the theater where I live. And even though I could have seen it if I drove over an hour, I never really got the chance to do it, especially considering that I work 6 days a week. I usually don't like driving far distances if I don't have to. But thankfully the movie is now on HBO Max, so I was able to watch it just a couple days ago, and I thought I'd give you guys my thoughts on the film. The film is a sequel to the 2021 film Mortal Kombat, and the basic premise is the Mortal Kombat tournament has officially begun, and the contestants of Earthrealm have to recruit Johnny Cage, played by Karl Urban, to defeat the villains of Outworld, who are being led by the villainous Shao Kahn. Just a heads up, this will be a spoiler review, so let's get started with the positives. First and foremost, I actually really like Karl Urban as Johnny Cage. It was interesting going for like an older Johnny Cage, which is not unprecedented. We have seen that in like Mortal Kombat 11. And though Karl Urban may be a bit too old for the part, and probably would have been better cast about 10 years ago, he is good as an aging, past his prime, but still got it action star who uses his charm more than anything to help the good guys, and I did like his performance. The rest of the cast is pretty good too. Martin Ford does a damn good job as Shao Kahn. He's big, intimidating, and imposing, and I actually rather liked him. Adeline Rudolph plays Kitana, and I swear she looks like Olivia Munn in a lot of scenes, and I really enjoyed her as well. She's basically the main character of the movie, which I was a little bit surprised by. Karl Urban, I would say, is probably the secondary character. He gets probably the second amount of screen time, but it's really Kitana's story and about her getting revenge on Shao Kahn, who basically makes her his surrogate daughter after murdering her father at the beginning of the film. Speaking of good performances, Josh Lawson is also back once again as Kano, and he just does a magnificent job here. He's incredibly funny, and if you liked him in the first film, you'll definitely like him here. Jessica McName returns again as Sonya, and she does a good job as well, and it's probably an improvement over her character in the first film. I don't love her as Sonya, but she is well cast here. And of course, Hiroyuki Sanada does a great job once again as Scorpion. Another positive of the film had to be the fights themselves. I've heard a lot of people online saying that the Liu Kang and Kung Lao fight was their favorite, and that is a very enjoyable fight. The choreography is really good in it, as well as the other fights in the film. And if you're here for just Mortal Kombat fighting and action and gore, you're going to have a good time, because there's really not a single bad fight in the film, and they're all handled very well and very gruesome. I think the overall story is an improvement over the first film. I do think maybe they could have tightened up some of the plot lines a little bit. I do think that the whole thing with Jade and Kitana was kind of obvious. It was obvious that Jade was going to turn against the bad guys at some point in the film, and it's not really surprising at all when it does happen. But in her and Kitana's little friendship, while it was interesting, it just kind of slowed things down a bit. But for the most part, I did enjoy the story, and I thought it was fairly well paced as well. And of course, the soundtrack is really fun. You do have the original Mortal Kombat theme, which is put in here as well. And there's a few other throwback songs to the 90s. And overall, the soundtrack is fun and pumping and does match a movie like this. I think another positive is Cole Young being killed off in his first fight in the movie. I have nothing against Louis Tan as an actor. He seems like a nice guy, and he is way more enjoyable in this film than he was in the first one. But we really didn't need a surrogate character that doesn't exist in the games in order to introduce us to this world. You can still do the fish out of water thing, which they did in this film with Johnny Cage, but just make it a character from the games. So Cole was cluttering up an already pretty cluttered movie, and I think it was a very smart move to take him out the way they did. And while some people may feel bad that Cole Young died, all I could think of when it happened was
no. Anyway.
And that may be harsh, but I think it's a pretty positive that they got him out of the picture when they did. No disrespect to the actor, but what a shitty character, and I'm glad to see him dead. So now let's get into the negatives. First and foremost, I do think that there are some very inconsistent effects in the movie. Some of the special effects look rather good, and the handmade sets do look good, like the Tarkatan village looks nice, and Donia, I think the city itself looks pretty interesting, even though those look kind of small. But anytime there's an extended sequence where they need like a big background, it just looks like CGI. Not necessarily bad CGI, but just very noticeable CGI. Another negative, I think, would have to be the overall Jade and Katana side story. It's not that it's necessarily bad. I actually think they both act pretty well with each other, and you do buy them as friends. But it's so obvious where it's going, and it's completely unsurprising once Jade betrays Outworld for the good guys. You knew it was going to happen. And it just padded out the runtime, and I think that whole plot line could have been just trimmed down to like a couple scenes. And lastly, I don't think that every character was necessarily utilized properly here. For instance, Shang Tsung returns for this film, and he's just not that interesting, and is just as uninspired as he was in the first film. I like Chen Han, the actor. Heck, he was even in The Dark Knight as Lao, and he was great in that movie. But here, he almost seems bored. They did get him a slightly better wig than he had in the first film, so he doesn't look quite as bad. But Shang Tsung was basically wasted, and there's no point for him to be in the film. And then you have Quan Chi, a character that I really like from the video games. And he has a few scenes. He's basically just a sorcerer. And by the end of the film, they've pretty much captured him and are forcing him to help them. And it's just, what a way to downplay what could have been a great villain for a third film. Although I don't really think we're going to get a third one after the box office of this one, but I digress. And unfortunately, it doesn't just go to those two villains as far as misused screen time. As far as Scorpion goes, who I really enjoyed, he's basically a side note in this film, just like he was in the first one. He does have a good fight scene towards the end, don't get me wrong. And it is nice to see him basically more or less ruling the Netherrealm. But all in all, as much as I love Scorpion, he's basically just a footnote in this movie, and that's just unfortunate. But apart from those few gripes, I had a lot of fun with this one. I do feel it's an overall improvement on the first film, and while I still don't think this is my favorite Mortal Kombat movie, it is a very entertaining one, and a very enjoyable film that I do recommend. All in all, I'm going to have to give Mortal Kombat II a 7 out of 10. If we're talking about pure entertainment, it's probably an 8 out of 10, easily. But I do have to look at the film's flaws, and I think there are some pacing issues here. And I do think a lot of the characters are misused. Even great ones like Liu Kang have a brief moment to shine in the film, but then they kind of take a back seat. I do think overall choosing Katana as the protagonist was actually an inspired choice, and I think it does work here. Although the film really hypes up Johnny Cage, and though he does get a good amount of screen time, it feels like he's the secondary lead, whereas Katana takes the main role, and I found Johnny Cage to be a little more interesting. Still a good film overall, and even though I think some of the storylines could have been trimmed, and some of the characters are a bit mishandled, it is a fun, bloody good time. I'm actually a big fan of the Mortal Kombat series, and I do think it's great that we got this movie. Even though this film did do better than the first Mortal Kombat, that one didn't really do well at the box office, mostly because it was released right during COVID and on HBO Max the same day as the release. But this film didn't have those restrictions, and it only made slightly more than the first film, and didn't really turn a profit. There is talks of doing a third film, which I still would like to see if they do make it, but I just don't see it happening, unfortunately, due to the lower box office. Well, that's the review. Next, I'll probably do a video on Masters of the Universe, because, to my surprise, that film has already been released on streaming as well, after only about a month and a half. And I thought that was fairly entertaining, and I'd like to give you my thoughts on that one as well. I do thank you all for watching. Let me know what your favorite Mortal Kombat movie or favorite Mortal Kombat game is down below. And peace out.